we have the discussions of this nature, it is also a question of saying we need to rethink our freedom as well. I mean, voter education is very important, but I think the timing of the dialogue itself is also maybe, I can say, problematic, because then when Comrade Kia her opening remarks, did mention that, the question of having these dialogues, but at the same time, the purpose of having these dialogues. It's not just a question of coming and then going again without understanding maybe the why we're here. So I think she had tried to unpack and So Amanda! Away! So comrade, as I table my point, I will make sure that I mix and obviously the program director will conclude by maybe clarifying all the other questions. So comrade, I think for me, having this dialogue in the context of land occupations, speaking from my position, that for me, I don't want to lie or I'm not clear enough whether elections work, elections do not work. At this moment, we've seen in the previous national elections that a lot of young people lost confidence, in the electoral system, and not just in the electoral system itself, but because of the failures of the state in delivering according to the expectations of the people. So now, that brings me to this question, is to say, we as voters, does it work for us or not? Because people have been voting since 1994, and yet, in this democratic dispensation, we still see huge inequalities and we still see injustices. And I think law and Makabani is neither clear that the whole mandate way to October when done with needs. I got 70. But we need to ask ourselves these questions. If we do not vote, what is the consequence of not voting? Because they say our vote is our voice. And then they say the power to the people. And I started to interrogate this question of saying amandla, Like what does it mean exactly to have amandla? And theoretically and in practical terms, what does it mean to say power to the people? Because the democracy was sold to us as the government for the people, by the people, with the people. And that's what we understand about the democracy itself. But in practice, what does democracy mean? Because when you vote and then you put X on the ballot paper, you're actually saying, I'm watching you. To that politician or to that political party, because in action, that electoral system itself is problematic because it favors or it's biased towards political parties. And then what does it mean to us as voters? Because when we are reminded about the historical injustices that happened, it's 30 years now to democracy, but we have not seen much change. And there are other people who will say to you, it was better then. But apartheid was not bad. But in terms of delivery, other people feel that it was better, and you will see contradicting statements from different people, and you ask yourself a question, what does it mean to be in a democratic dispensation? So I think without order, the constitution is very clear. I mean, they say in South Africa, South Africa got the best constitution. But then, constitution is just it's a paper. It was not supposed to be just a paper or a book. But the constitution is supposed to be a living document. So now the question is that who benefits from the injustices that happen? So, land occupations do not have water, some of them. Basic services, they don't have electricity and toilets. But then, ask yourself, for 10 years into democracy, people still have to fight to get water. So if you are a voter and you are an occupier, you don't have water, what does it mean to you? Does democracy benefit you? Then what is the alternative then? If then you don't vote, What does it mean? Does it mean that you've given away power? Because they say it's power. If you exercise this power, you can use it against or for your own benefit. But again, the question is, if I vote and I see no results in voting, and then people come and present their manifestos, the political parties present their manifestos, but who holds the political party accountable? Because I think even IEC is not doing enough in terms of making sure. For example, you've mentioned Comrade Kiapa, where are the constituencies? They don't have numbers. Some of them, they don't have, they just sit on the boardrooms and then decide that we are starting a political party. How many political parties that we have? It's confusing, comrade, like in real, because it's confusing, and I don't know where are we getting as the country, where are we going exactly in terms of the future of the country itself. Like, we are the government of national unity then, but then we see that people speak about coalitions. And what does it mean for an ordinary person like me? So now these are the questions we need to have, comrade, to say, how do we become strategic voters if we are to vote or if we are voting? Because like Abashal Basam did that, but that is a different context. Because even the political dynamics within these different provinces is not the same. Maybe Abashal is their strategy to say, since there are also political killings, and then maybe it's their strategy also to make sure that EFF will put pressure in terms of investigations of those matters. So I think maybe, so Western Cape is a different context. And it becomes difficult as a black person, and when you have to vote, but living in a very unequal city. In the most unequal city, whereby Cape Town, you live on the other side of Cape Town, and then you have to go to town, you have to see other things where you feel like you don't belong to this place. You know, so I think we need to also look at that, comrade, that the working class itself is struggling of the working class. It's not just about thinking about the voting party, also voting strategically, as to say that we have numbers as the people and we've got power, but how do we understand and how do we make sure that we utilize, we use this power for our own benefit? If our expectations are clear, that if we are voting for a particular political party and that political party wins power tomorrow, then what is our expectation? What are we expecting from that political party? So I think maybe it's those questions as to say that we need to reflect as occupiers and also thinking about, because here if it doesn't improve the living conditions, people will die, comrades. Because here we're talking about the poor living conditions, and if your vote is not improving your living conditions, then that means you die slowly in poverty. That's what it means, Makabani. So, in other words, if we continue. So, as I'm concluding, we're not clear a program director that how much time is allocated for each speaker. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just concluding it, just the closing remarks. Yeah, so comrade, I'm saying this because people are dying in pain slowly. And you need to understand that politicians want to make people poor in numbers so that they can have constituencies. Because that's where they find that opportunity to exploit power. Because they understand if people are poor, then they can manipulate, people will not question, and then they continue to get away with whatever they are doing. So, Amanyama Kama says you are poor, let's go so that tell me any political party that has been clear in terms of availing scholarships, in terms of making sure Utabantu, Bayafunda, Bantuan. Political parties are not clear in terms of education, like in terms of free education, in terms of all these things. That means they are not, it's intentional, they are not serious about improving the living conditions of the poor. So the working class is on its own. We are on our own. And then the working class needs to, I'm not saying maybe the question of saying that political parties, is their political party that speak directly to the issues of the working class. Like for example, there are parties like EFFs. Yes, it does table some of the issues of the working class, but the EFF is also in opposition. But what did happen? Last EFF in 2020 was saying people must occupy. And then people occupy now, people are living in poor conditions, they don't have water. What is the EFF saying on that? For example, so these are some of the questions that we need to have comrade that how do we hold political parties into account? How do we put pressure? So with those closing remarks, I will say, yeah, that's just my 2 cents. And then I'm hoping that at least it may clarify some of the questions.